Hello, and welcome to the third and final bite-sized webinar in which we will continue to discuss how to create an adaptive systems planning capability within your organisation. My name is Stephen Herndelhofer, and today I'm going to be joined by Dr. Craig Malshagen, who is the Associate Director of Research and Solution Design at BMA. As I said in the introduction to the first two webinars, how often do our plans get signed off at a point in time and then sit gathering dust on the shelf? Most regulatory cycles propagate the need for 5 to 10 year business plans, creating regulatory obligations and targets that need to be delivered come what may, but often regardless of a changing context. And of course, in the dynamic context that we all face today, our plans absolutely need to be adaptable. So we structured the three sessions as follows. In the first session, we focused on the key drivers for building such a capability, and also what are the advances in technology that now make such a capability possible. In the second, we covered the approach to building an internal capability. And today, in the final session, we're going to pull it all together and share a couple of case studies, really focusing in on the benefits that such a capability will return to the organisation. But let's first quickly recap on what was covered in the first couple of webinars. So in the first session, we talked about VUCA, our dynamic context, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. The importance of systems thinking as an approach or methodology to manage within a VUCA world, the principles of systems thinking were also covered. We outlined how by bringing together adaptive planning and systems thinking, we could create an adaptive systems planning capability. We then compared how a top-down whole system approach differed from a more traditional bottom-up risk-based portfolio approach. To bring this to life, we then took a brief look at the work completed at Sydney Water, which blended these two approaches to deliver outstanding results, and Craig will touch again on that case study a little later in the webinar. And finally, we concluded with some recent observations from the UK water regulator, Ofwat. In the second webinar, we explored how organisations are building their own capability and covered the importance of setting clear objectives and focusing on a business problem, challenge, or process. We looked at the need to consider appropriate time horizons and how the nature of the value proposition changes over those time horizons. Looked at the barriers organisations generally point to as reasons why they shouldn't develop such a capability. The top three most popular being data, people and skills, and of course, the old favourite, it will cost too much. We don't have the cash. We then explored the key enablers, such as senior sponsorship, identifying value early and tracking benefits, growing internal capacity and capability, and avoiding supplier dependence. We then took a look at the business process required to establish such a capability. And finally, we took a look at how National Grid are using this capability to explore how they are going to develop and repurpose their infrastructure to carry hydrogen and enable decarbonisation of the UK's industrial clusters. And we'll take a deeper look at this case study and also hear from the client later in the webinar. As I said, today we're focusing on a number of case studies, but before that, given that there's been a recent Ofwat publication that relates directly to this subject, I'd like to first take a quick update on some of the key drivers. So I mentioned in the first webinar that Ofwat, the UK water regulator, were critical of water companies in their asset management maturity assessment of the sector, particularly in relation to how they manage uncertainty and also for their lack of a systemic approach. And as is now the established process, about this time within the price review cycle, central government set the agenda for utility regulators, who then consult with the sector as to how to embed those requirements into the price review process. Earlier this year, central government clearly indicated that they expect water companies to shift towards long-term adaptive planning. Ofwat have now responded to this challenge, and in their most recent consultation document on the 2024 price review, Ofwat mentioned the term adaptive planning no less than 23 times. The term adaptive pathways is referenced a further 21 times. Within this consultation, they articulate why they believe adaptive planning is an essential capability for managing future uncertainty, and that this capability, manifest through the quality of plans, will have a material impact on company outcomes. In other words, when it comes to adaptive planning, they expect companies to up their game in this space, and failure to do so for PR24 will result in a material financial impact. They also present the first draft of 8 common reference scenarios as a framework to explore proposed strategies. These upper and lower limit scenarios cover technology, climate change, water demand, and environmental ambition. The permutations associated with just these 8 scenarios, whether they are considered in isolation or in combination, are enormous. Nevertheless, Ofwat expect companies to go beyond these 8 scenarios and use scenario planning to consider local and company factors, assess strategic risks, demonstrate resilience, undertake sensitivity analysis, test assumptions, and ultimately validate and assure their long-term strategies. The key point here is that water companies will not be able to avoid the requirement to develop this capability. A good regulatory settlement is now dependent on being able to demonstrate an adaptive planning capability discharged through what will be and need to be a bulk scenario management capability. Given the range of parameters and applications expected of this new capability, an effective and rapid scenario management capability will be essential. So, as you can, I'm sure you will understand, the price review has a key focus on future costs, which will need to be agreed for operational processes and capital expenditure. Not surprising, then, that this consultation document also considers how adaptive planning will impact major capital investments. Whilst the document identifies other applications for adaptive planning, through this consultation, the key feedback that we at BMA will be returning to Ofwat is that whilst we absolutely support adaptive planning, there needs to be more focus on the integration of a systemic approach. Whilst adaptive planning is a relatively new phrase for the sector, BMA have been providing solutions to clients for many years, enabling the creation of advanced internal adaptive systems planning capabilities. As such, and given the very limited reference to encouraging a systemic approach within the document, for me, a systemic approach should be very much at the heart of adaptive planning and also integrated into the tools that companies deploy to satisfy these requirements. The way we would frame this within an overall value proposition for our clients is that by building an adaptive systems planning capability, our clients are enabling the next generation decision support capability. Such a capability provides a mechanism to capture, refine, and develop subject matter expertise. It can be used thoroughly to test business strategies and provide board level assurance for the same, and really does provide a quick return on investment, often less than 6 months. And again, this will be demonstrated through the case studies that Craig explores with you in a few moments' time. So regardless of a regulatory driver, our clients are deriving value from this capability today. I would therefore advise any prospective clients to see past the looming regulatory requirement and build this capability, because the expectations and needs of your stakeholders, your customers, and the environment demand it of you. So whilst we operate across a range of markets, our methodology, our technology and applications are sector agnostic, and the tools which underpin this capability are highly configurable, rapidly deployed, and will satisfy a broad range of stakeholders. And they're also very intuitive to use. So enough of me. I'm going to hand over now to Craig to introduce himself and also take you through a few case studies.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm Dr. Craig Malshagen, and I'll take you through some case studies of where we've implemented adaptive system planning and mass scenario analysis capability, talk about how the client used it, and more importantly, the kind of benefits that these capabilities realized for the clients. So first off the bat, we have Sydney Water. Sydney Water deliver water to over 5 million people in the Greater Sydney and Illawarra regions. Not dissimilar to many water companies, their challenges are centered on affordability, population growth, deteriorating asset base, asset capacity constraints, and pressure on service levels. And we were tasked with delivering a 30-year investment program which delivered all service and environmental obligations while maintaining flat customer bills in real terms. Their starting point, based on their existing asset investment planning process at the time, was a plan which estimated a cost of 43 billion Australian dollars. We were able to develop a plan that cost 32 billion Australian dollars, delivered all the same outcomes and more, and at that $32 billion level, crucially kept customer bills flat in real terms. So let's break that down a little bit more for you. So first, by taking a top-down whole system approach, we're able to strip 17 billion out of the plan while delivering the same outcomes. And the mass scenario analysis capability, the adaptive system planning, was critical to this because it allowed them to rapidly explore different network configurations, different use of technology and how that would impact their operating model, explore all these things to ultimately arrive at a plan which reduced the spend by 17 billion. This created some headroom, which we were able to build in an additional 6 billion of enhancement investment options, which weren't in that original 43 billion plan, which delivering improved environmental outcomes while still keeping customer bills flat. So it was genuinely more for less. And finally, the final optimized investment program kept asset health steady level, but with a slightly reduced asset health spend, with a reduction of 1.3 billion by optimizing the overlap between renewal and growth investments. Here we have a more tactical asset management example, looking at capital maintenance spend on gas pressure reduction assets, which are highly reliable, maintainable assets that don't fail very often due to high amounts of redundancy. Here we're able to demonstrate that their previous asset-centric approach often overestimated the benefit of capital maintenance by 42% compared to a system approach, which focuses on system reliability and system functional failure rather than individual asset defects, for example. So the original approach was driving unnecessary spend by overestimating the benefits. So with our top-down whole system approach that more accurately quantified benefits, we were able to re-optimize the capital maintenance program, achieving a 12.5% to 19% cost saving, while also enabling them to focus actions and interventions to prevent system functional failure rather than, for example, asset defects, which then enabled them to, with that cost saving, increase asset performance, asset system reliability by 25% across that asset base. Here we have an operational example with a bioresource production planning business at Anglian Water. We applied a top-down whole system approach to provide Anglian Water with an operational adaptive system planning tool that they use on a weekly basis to do their production planning in a much more holistic and agile way. And it's allowed them to take a large, geographically distributed and complex asset base to be, and operate it as a single system rather than making decisions in silos by asset cohort, site, region, etc. And this has delivered a 2 million a year OPEX saving, whilst at the same time increasing generation of low carbon renewable energy by 8% and increasing asset utilization by 10%, achieving their target of 90% asset utilization, which they had not achieved before. And for our last case study, we're going to look at National Grid. So National Grid own and operate the gas transmission network across the whole of the UK, or mainland UK. 3 years ago, they approached us to help them implement a mass scenario analysis, adaptive system planning capability. They had already an asset investment planning tool, a bottom-up asset investment planning tool. They had already hydraulic modeling tools and capabilities, but what they weren't able to do was rapidly look at the range of future energy scenarios that they wanted to have confidence in their network strategy and their business plans that they were putting forward. And the reason behind that was a sudden increase in the uncertainty around the future of energy in the UK. The future energy scenarios that they were faced with had gas demand dropping to zero over the next few decades, or staying the same as it was now, and everything in between. There's some futures which had lots of hydrogen, some futures that had no hydrogen, some futures which were blending hydrogen with natural gas. There's a huge amount of uncertainty. So they needed a new capability to be able to confidently develop a network strategy and investment program in that context. So we worked with them to build a mass scenario analysis, adaptive system planning capability, and we took them from a position where they were manually solving 28 future energy scenarios per year. It was a process that took 20 analysts 10 weeks, 4 person years to complete. So it was very manual. It involved a lot of subjective human judgment. So there was issues with repeatability and consistency. We first took that process and automated it, used optimization to make it repeatable, consistent, data-driven. And in the first instance, ran those 28 scenarios through our platform, such that the outcomes were consistent, defensible, and optimal, which informed their business planning at the time. They then took that capability on internally, and in the first year of having the NetStrat solution, they were able to run 800 future energy scenarios, looking at their natural gas network and strategy around that. So you can see a real step change there. Since then, they've moved their focus really on looking at hydrogen, developing options for hydrogen transmission backbones across the UK, how they would transition to hydrogen, perhaps integrating with a European hydrogen backbone. And this year, 2021, they have run 8,000 scenarios and counting. So they've gone from a situation where they would run 28 scenarios a year in a very manual, kind of iterative way, to where they're now able to literally solve thousands of scenarios in a week. So it's a real step change in their capability, at least to solve large numbers of scenarios. And there's technical aspects of that make that impressive, but it's not really. There's no so what just in terms of the numbers. The so what is the benefit they get in terms of their decision quality as a business. So I'm going to show you a short video now where Tony Green, the Director of Hydrogen at National Grid, and Mariam, the analyst who's using the NetStrat solution, talk about what this capability means for them and the kind of benefits that they realize from that. After that short video, Stephen will pick up again to close the presentation. So let's run the National Grid video.
Our future is moving away from one reliant on fossil fuels and turning towards one of more sustainable energy. It's an uncertain future with a myriad of possible outcomes. For National Grid, modelling future supply and demand scenarios to identify the optimal roadmap to hydrogen is critical. To do this, National Grid have worked with business modelling associates to develop the NetStrat tool.
BMA have been incredibly useful because it costs around 5 times more to build a new pipe than it does to repurpose it. So what we're really interested in is which pipes we can repurpose and do so most efficiently. With 7,000 kilometers of pipe, there's so many choices, and the NetStrat capability allows us to look at a lot of potential scenarios very, very quickly.
Previously, we were able to do tens of scenarios each year, but currently we are able to do thousands of scenarios every week, which is fantastic for us.
We're really delighted to be working with National Grid. They're using our technology and they're using it really well. They're really leading the way in terms of how you use large-scale scenario analysis to navigate complex and uncertain problems. And what they're doing in terms of playing a key role in decarbonisation is really important, and we're pleased to be a part of that.
So, to conclude, whether asset-intensive organisations are putting focus on adaptive planning or not, it is a capability that regulators will soon expect of them. The transition from reactive to proactive is a journey many such organisations have long aspired to achieve, particularly in the field of asset management. Arguably, when considering the longer-term asset strategies such organisations need to consider, given the dynamic nature of the context we all now operate in, with regards to growing volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity, being proactive in our planning processes is simply not enough. It is the adaptive muscle we need to focus on. And with that, as I hope you have seen through these webinars, comes the requirement for a range of new tools and new capabilities. The good news is that those tools and capabilities are out there, and they don't take that long to develop. But don't delay. Expectations for such capabilities are growing very rapidly. So, thank you very much for listening. We hope the webinars were of value to you, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. If you want further information, feel free to reach out to myself or Craig by email, LinkedIn, or our website. Once again, thank you for listening.